Things are going well, and 14 minutes later, I hear a rat-a-tat-tat, and I kind of put my head down. Many parents pleading for me to help find their kids who were supposed to be with their swim club shot down from a perched position and took 7 lives. I, being a 10-year professional, working in park explicitly for one organization, was also fearful of, oh my God, what's next for me? I committed 6 weeks of a mental health crash course, doing everything within my power. So I did the diet, the exercise, the natural sunlight. I did it all, man. And I have now the tools and the abilities to control it and to manage it, so that way, when I do feel a panic attack coming on, I can better manage that. But we focus on the triumphant return and the walking tall through the tragedy. Also calling people to be extremely vulnerable and sharing their story and tell the deep, dark secrets of what they went through, so that others know they're not alone themselves.
There's one thing that all champions have in common. They get shit done. So welcome to the Get Shit Done experience. Well, we are back at it again. Yes, this is the Get Shit Done experience, also known as the GSDX podcast. Got to tell you, you can find us at www.gsdxpodcast.com. And by the way, if you are looking to sponsor a podcast because of brand impressions, remember, a podcast is about branding. It's not necessarily about marketing. It's about the exposure, getting your message out there. It's about your logo being seen repeatedly over and over and over again. And right now, our YouTube channel is going off the hook. We just crossed 300,000 views in 30 episodes. On YouTube alone, not to mention what's happening on Apple and Spotify. And we are getting a lot of attention. We've crossed 3.4 million brand impressions across all socials. That's since July 15th, 2024. So we are being seen, and that might be great for your logo to be seen in accordance with our podcast and our production. So if you are interested, reach out to me through the website, or you could DM me on LinkedIn. You know I'm active there. Let's just get that out of the way. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for listening to that. I've got an amazing guest here today for you. This is an amazing story. It's going to blow you away. So you need to sit tight. Maybe go on a long car ride. I don't know. Maybe if her baby's crying, you just throw the baby in the back, go on a car ride, listen to this story. But first off, I just want to go over a little bit of a background here. So please welcome to the show, Mr. Chris Maliszewski.
You got it right, bro.
Did I get it right? That's amazing,
That's
right?
Chicagoan in you. We were talking earlier. You can't mess up a good Polish name being from the area.
Z's and skis.
That's it. You know who you're from if you got a Z or a ski in your name.
So this amazing human that, first off, is rocking the baddest leather jacket that I've seen. He wins the award for best dressed on the podcast this far. Sorry, Bill Himmelstein. I love what you were wearing, but he's got the Pearl Jam hat. So I'm like a diehard Pearl Jam fan. And rocking the leather jacket with the hoodie and a camo shirt. I mean, come on.
Listen, there's not many things I have. Style is definitely not one of them. I'll tell a little bit about how I dress and why I dress the way I dress as we get into my story. But it's more about comfort and just, sharing my expression, right? Yeah. And expressing who I am, how I'm feeling that day. But I'll take that award, man. Stylish is not something I've ever been.
Well, you're right now, dude. You're speaking your truth.
Pearl Jam too. Don't.
I know we got to do. Yeah. Hell, we might break out into songs. I love breathe, whatever you want to do. I don't care. We'll go. So let me just give you a little background on this well-dressed cat here. Okay, this is a pitcher. Okay, so he pitched at University of Iowa, right? And wrapped up his career pitching and decided, you know what? I think I could coach a little bit. So he decides to coach at the University of Iowa as a pitching coach, assistant. And then his journey takes him to Valparaiso, where he's also a pitching coach, assistant there. And he's, being mentored by somebody who played for the LA Dodgers, right? And was at the Kirk Gibson walk-off home run game with Tommy Lasorda jumping around in there going crazy. He's got the wing down. He's running down. He can barely run. His knees are all blown out. And his ex head coach is in the dugout going wild and crazy. So he's getting a little bit of pedigree there from those teachings. And then, of course, as the University of Iowa does, it draws people back because it's such an amazing place. So he's drawn back to go be a pitching coach, assistant coach there at the University of Iowa, helping people to develop. I would imagine a lot of film, a lot of scouting.
A lot of work.
A lot of work, yeah.
A lot of baseball.
And by the way, Big Ten baseball is underrated. I mean, that's like, I know your SEC, I know some of the California schools, but like,
it's changing, college baseball, the landscape of the game, the structure of of how things are being done is really leveling the playing field. I wish I was coaching now, given some of the circumstances. But what I don't really, what I'm happy I'm not a part of is the NLI and all of that.
Oh, gosh.
So I don't want to get into that. But yeah. The Big Ten is, back then, certainly underrated. Now it's making a name for itself, rightfully so.
There's always savings, but it's about way more than savings alone. Total Technology Solutions Group redefines managed print services. Excellence is the minimum standard. TTSG is a true managed print service provider, deeply understanding your technology and business goals. Your business is unique. Our solutions are tailored to your current and future business goals. Our customer-first approach empowers and delights. TTSG can ensure your technology environment will scale as your business does. So as you navigate business and constant change, partner with TTSG for premium advisement and seamless implementation of your technology goals. We set the bar high. Your people deserve it. Peace of mind. Powerful innovation. TTSG.com.
So this journey that we're about to get into started with an athletic prowess. And so that means you've come from an environment of competition. You've come from an environment of, working from the bottom up, which we know in sports, that's just how it works. You're at the bottom until you're not, right? And you got to work your way up. You also are in a circle of really tough-minded people that are competing at the highest level. So that kind of starts to be the fabric of who you are as well, right?
Yeah.
So take us back a little bit to maybe let's give us your best pitching story. Let's hear that first.
Gosh, that's a tough one. But
we're gonna have to fact check this with the batters because they'll be like, "No, I went deep on him." I don't know.
Believe me, there was a lot of people that went deep off me.
Me too.
That's why I'm sitting in this chair. If I was really good, I would still be playing.
Me too. I still recall home runs hitting tin roofs, so ruining my weekend.
Yeah, Vasily Spanos still haunts me to this day. No one else will know that name, but he probably hit the most home runs off of me in college. He was a hitter from Indiana at the time, but nevertheless, my sophomore year, I probably had the best of my career, and for whatever reason, it came down to legitimately the last game of the regular season. Illinois was at Iowa. They were playing on our field at Banks Field, and whoever won the last game of the year would get into the conference tournament.
Nice.
So in baseball, not all teams, only 6 teams out of the Big Ten made the conference tournament. So it wasn't like basketball where everybody made it, and volleyball and things like that. So Illinois was on our field, and of course I got the ball and I started, and I think I threw 5 2/3 innings and shoved it.
And it's still 7-inning games, or
no, because they're 9.
9.
Yeah, there was a 9-inning game, and so I beat Illinois, and it was good to beat my home state, if that even was a thing. But we ended up going to the Big Ten tournament, and I had some nice accolades after that season, and went on to have a nice college career. I wasn't a standout player by any means, but you're right. Going through the grind of being a Division I athlete, and even before that, the recruiting process and the pressures that went into trying to gain a scholarship and things of that sort really do become a part of your fabric. It really does become a part of who you are and what you believe in, and the toughness and the things you won't expose to the world because you'd be seen as weak or not as much of a competitor, right? And so even more so than, in completing my career, it was a nice career, 4 years I lettered, and I'm extremely proud of that, and I have a strong affection for the University of Iowa, not only because it's just a kick-ass place, but it really helped build me into the man I am today. If they want to take credit for that or not, I don't know, but I really do accredit, that experience and that time as a young adult student athlete, and I attribute a lot of that to who I am today. And then, of course, as I was saying, Iowa is just such a special place. And at one point, I think I may have even had the most years of service combined to the institution as an athlete, player, coach.
15 years.
It was something like that. Yeah, it was a lot. And so, I hold that Iowa City, the University of Iowa, near and dear. And I just can't say nothing.
So I'm the youngest of 6 kids. I have 3 siblings right now that are like, heck yeah, Hawkeyes, right? Because they went to Iowa. And then I have 2 in-laws. The sister-in-law and a brother-in-law. Best man, if I'm ready. Yeah, exactly. No, you have plenty to tell.
My daughter, today is National Women and Girls in Sports Day, believe it or not. And my daughter loves basketball, and with the uprising of Caitlin Clark and all that stuff, being a Hawkeye, that was the perfect timing of everything for me and my little girl. So they got to be loving Caitlin Clark too. Man.
Okay, so in high school, before every baseball game, I just absolutely ripped Porch by Pearl Jam. That was my song, right? In the car, like before you got to walk out, we're going to go do the warm-ups and, field and ground balls, whatever. I'm in my car just laying in the porch. And so that was my absolute thing. So we're talking about mindset, right? So what's the mindset for an athlete at that level? Pressure situation, you've got some fan base that's there. But I mean, you're pitching for your life every day. There's somebody behind you that's trying to get your spot. You have competition not only across the diamond, but within the dugout. They want your spot. Those teams are stacked. There's only so many spots. So what's the mindset that you work with to give yourself that grace that you need to be able to perform, but also to kind of have that fire going? For me, I was a center fielder though. Sure. So for me, it was like put on porch, run through a wall, right? Yeah. For a pitcher, it's a little more calm.
Well, I think there's a development that goes into that, right? I think as a young athlete, as a freshman and maybe even a sophomore at that level, it was just that I'm going to run through a wall. I'm going to prove I'm better. I'm going to be more aggressive. I'm going to work harder. I'm going to prove myself.
Yeah.
Right. And I think as I matured and as we all get older, whether it's in sports, business, life, you start to give yourself some grace and you realize the challenge is only within yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And you learn to only control the things you can control and focus on the things that you have influence on. And as I started to age and even now into business, I worry about the things I can control. It doesn't matter to me what the guy behind me is really doing because it's out of my control.
What a great message for companies, for brands. Like, be so obsessed with what you're doing that you're not really worried about what the competition is doing.
Yeah, and I think exactly that, right? Like, I do fundraising, and we'll get into that later, but I don't think it's out of sheer stupidity. It's maybe more naivete, but like, I don't really care what other auctioneers are doing. Yeah. I don't care what other fundraising companies are doing because they're not for me, right? Mm-hmm. And nobody's doing what I'm doing. And as an athlete, you have to take that mentality too, right? There was no other 5'10" squatty body left-hander on the squad who could thumb it in and cut it into righties. And so I had to be the best at that. And it didn't matter that there was a guy throwing 100 miles an hour behind me because he had a role as well. Just like in a company, we all have roles. We all have talents to leverage. And as I matured in baseball particularly, and that carried me over so well into being a good coach, because I was able to instill that in.
And you weren't. It wasn't all natural and easy for you based on your DNA. You weren't 6'4" throwing 103, so you got to work a little bit harder on system control, pitching plan, right?
Yeah,
execution, all those different things, which typically leads to becoming a great coach.
Yeah.
Because you understand that grind, so in order to be successful, you had to master that grind, so then you can teach it.
Yeah, it's so funny. And, I would wish this on no senior college student athlete, but my senior year, the coaching staff that recruited me and gave me my scholarship and believed in me was let go.
Oh.
And that happens a lot in college sports, even more so now because there's more money involved. But it was a blessing in disguise. In my senior year, Jack Dahm became the head baseball coach at the University of Iowa after 20 years at Creighton University in Omaha.
Oh, only Creighton?
Yeah, only Creighton. And
powerhouse.
So Jack, Coach Dahm came in. I was a senior, and he's a Niles guy, and so we hit it off similarly to how you and I have, John. And we just bonded as him being a mentor, me being a young man, and he saw something in me, fortunately, that I didn't see in myself. He knew I probably wasn't going to make it to the big leagues. Well, I thought I still was. And he's like, time out, man. You might want to think about coaching, and I got a job for you next year, right? Think about how indebted I am to him. He saw something in me, and it largely was because of my approach to daily practice, my approach to the games, my leadership.
Yeah, can you download that into our freshmen?
Exactly. Yeah. And it was a really weird phenomenon, right? I'll tell you, the last game of my senior year, it's always senior day, right? I pitched the day before. I started the day before. I got my ass handed to me, right? I was an emotional wreck. I was crying before the game. There's photos of me getting pulled off the mound.
Yeah.
I'm going to...
You felt like you'd let people down, kind of a thing? Or?
It was a realization that this was the last time I was ever going to compete.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like this was... And not only that, but I went out like pissing down my legs. Like nobody wants to do that.
Yeah, you missed the 2-foot putt at the Masters. Like, what the hell?
So, but the next day was senior day. We played. I was an athlete. The next day was exit meetings, and I was talking to my teammates as a coach.
Oh, wow.
Right?
It was that fast.
That fast. And I never looked back for 10 years. And, some of those things that I learned as a senior that Coach Dom instilled in me, and then I was given opportunity to learn from the previous staff, Coach Brohammer, paid dividends, and I was able to make a 10-year coaching career out of it.
It's amazing. So what's the transition like from going from a player who's at the parties with the other players? And so you're a senior, you're at the party with the sophomore, and they're seeing who you really are, right? And then all of a sudden you're in a position of authority. Like, what's the transition like?
Well, I started going to parties with the coaches. No, truly, like, you know what? I think that was probably, looking back on it, the start of my vulnerability, right? And that journey, because it's an eye-opening thing when people know who you really are and you try to present yourself as somebody different, right? And I took the approach as a young coach as like, hey, I was just there. Let me tell you why I'm now coaching and not still playing. Let's not let you do that, right? Let's not have you in the bars as much as I was maybe or wasn't, right? Let's have you take those 20 extra swings or get those extra sprints, whatever the case may be, that I could say, hey, here's what I wish I would have done.
Yeah,
right?
I already made the mistake so you don't have to.
Yeah, and that's, and one of the things I learned from Coach Dom, believe it or not, the difference between expensive and inexpensive experience, right? Inexpensive experience is me relaying to those young freshmen as a coach, hey, here, let me tell you where I failed. Learn from my experience. Take my experience, and I'm giving to you inexpensively because you can hear what I'm saying. Right?
Yeah.
The expensive experience is what I went through. I was the guy that didn't maybe commit as much as I should have. It cost me something. That's expensive, right?
Yeah.
It cost me an experience, maybe playing longer. So let's learn from each other. And, that inexpensive, expensive experience thought process really has shaped my vulnerability, because I want everybody to learn through what I've been through, because I don't want everybody to go through what I went through. And I don't just mean the shooting.
Yeah.
I just mean life, right? I want to learn from others. And if others would be vulnerable like I am, think how much happier maybe we'd be a society.
Well, it's kind of like the concept of regret, right? Ultra successful people talk about the fact that you don't regret the things that you've done. You regret the things that you didn't try, that you didn't do. You have more regret from that. So I love that concept, because it's like, don't miss the things that I missed, and not get the full experience, max out your potential, and see where this takes you.
And think about what a gift it is when somebody, doesn't have to be a coach on a baseball field, right? A friend, a business colleague, wants to just share an experience with you, and that whether or not you really want to learn from something from it, you can. People are vulnerable. And let me tell you about the time I screwed up and lost this client, right?
Yeah.
Think about as somebody who's digesting that information, well, hell, I'm never going to do that, right? Or what would I have done differently? And we don't open ourselves up. And so I think as a young coach, having that mentality of, here's what I would have done differently, or here's really what's going on behind the scenes. And I was then able to say, hey, you know what? Like, all the chatter that went on in the clubhouse a year ago about how this coach is a you-know-what and this guy, that's not really true, because I'm looking at it from this.
I'm on this side now.
And I'll tell you, like, having both sides of trust was really important to me, and I gained it. And that was why I was brought back.
It's interesting. I think it's a great move for a coach to do that, because you almost become a voice for both, because you're connected to both, right? Like, you're the new guy in the room where they can go, hey, like, what are we missing? Right? When you were on that side, what were we not giving? And on the other side, you're telling the players, hey, you need to have a little bit of grace, because you're maybe not catching where they're coming from. I think this plays out in businesses where management has to make a really tough decision, and the staff looks at that as the management team being cold or not understanding and so on. But the management team is not in the closed door meeting fully understanding what the P&L looks like, or what the cash position looks like, or what a supplier is about to do. Maybe they're about to pull product, or whatever might be happening. And it gets lost in communication.
And think about it in sports perspective, right? The players don't know the pressure the head coach is getting from the front office, right? And in a college terms, right? The
athletic directors,
the players don't know the sweat that the coaches are having to endure from the ADs, from the boosters, from the fan base, from social media, message boards. The list goes on. And so there's so much to conversations in life and in business that we're not always a part of, that if we did give people grace and the benefit of the doubt, provided they earned it, right? I think, again, we would just advance so much further as a society and curing some of these mental health things that we have going on.
So I have massive ADHD and I can't stop looking at the Pearl Jam hat. And you had mentioned that you've been to like 90 concerts.
I wish it was
crazy.
90. No, well,
like,
first off, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I appreciate, sharing that you have ADHD. That means a lot, and not because I'm just here to serve, right? But I'm here to say, like, I wish more people would be honest about what's going on, because I'm sure people watch this show and are like, what's wrong with John? He's always doing...
Well, that's only one thing on the list. I mean, I have a scroll.
My point is right? Like, people aren't forthcoming about that. So I just want to acknowledge that.
No, I'm having trouble paying attention right now. There's a bright light behind you. There's a lot of logos in here. The cameras.
There's a problem. If I took the hat off, the bright light would shine off my bald spot. Exactly. And so you'd be even more...
I have been watching you kind of squint because it's hitting my forehead. And it's like, you feel like you're a little tanner since you got in the studio. It's like kind of like a tanning bed almost.
All right. So back to Pearl Jam.
Yes.
Yes. I wish it was 90, but my next show will be 75. I've seen them 74 times, all throughout the United States and in Canada. Started back in 98, took a little bit of a hiatus, when I was involved in athletics and baseball, because
a little tougher.
Yeah, it's a lot tougher. Your time is a little bit more spread thin. You don't have time for enjoyment, which is part of the reason why I was happy to get out. But, and I attribute Pearl Jam in many ways to exactly what you talked about with Porch, right?
Yeah.
Getting that energy, getting some of that competitiveness fired up and things of that sort. But long story short, I credit them in some ways with saving my life. And we'll talk about me being in the mass shooting later. Mm-hmm. But, that band has meant so much to me for so long, for so many different reasons, depending on the time of my life. But the most important has been the sleepless nights after being in a mass shooting when everybody was sleeping. I had nobody to talk to. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to turn the TV on. I didn't want to play violent video games. So I just listened to music, and I went to who was most familiar with, who uplifted me the most, what resonated most strongly, and of course I kept going back to Pearl Jam.
Yeah.
And so
me too. Fell asleep to it every night in college.
And here's a great story quickly. So I do baseball lessons on Thursday nights because I'm a single dad and I don't have my kids all the time, and so I have free time. But anytime I'm giving lessons, and I don't really realize it, but it's probably every day in life, I'm always wearing something that says Pearl Jam, t-shirt, hat, whatever. It's just something. And so I was working with these 13 and 14-year-old boys from 7:30 to 8:30 last week, and there was a new kid brought into the group, and we went through some stretching routines, and I overheard one kid saying to the new kid, "I told you he always wears something, Jam." And of course, me being like, I was like, "What, you guys like Pearl Jam?" And they're like, "We don't know who they are, but my dad likes them." And I'm like, "I'm that old.
My dad and mom think you're the coolest."
Yeah, so I'm that old, but you know what, man? Like, I come by it honestly. I love the band. I love what they stand for in many forms and fashions. And they saved my life at 3:00 in the morning when there was nothing else to do. I put them
talk about that. You can't see it, but maybe, when it warms up here in Chicago and I'm wearing a short sleeve shirt, I have a massive tattoo on my right arm that is an anchor with a compass on it. And it's part of the healing process of depression and anxiety.
Amazing.
Is to anchor, right? And to always know where you're going. And there's a ribbon that goes across it that says, makes much more sense to live in present tense.
Oh, I love it.
From the song Present Tense by Pearl Jam. That song, I can't get through it without it welling up because it means something to me. There's almost every Pearl Jam song I can go through and be like, I remember being there at that moment. I remember singing that in the car with my best man. I remember, so, and there's like Just Breathe. Like the first time I'd heard that song, like my dad had passed away around that time. Can't get through that song either because it means something. So we have that connection.
I love it, and I have some tattoos with some meaning as well. And I have a mural on my right arm. From my experience and a concert that was put on after that unfortunate day with Billy Corgan and at his tea shop, Madame Zuzu's. But tattoos are healing, man. And I was very lucky. There's a tattoo charity out there in the world called Healing Inc. And, what they do is they through an application process when there's communities that have experienced trauma. They go into that community, recruit tattoo artists to come and give trauma survivors free tattoos.
Awesome.
There's an application process because, as you can imagine, there's thousands of people that
lining up.
And through my experience, I was fortunate to be a recipient of one of the gifts. And so I met Patrick Cornolo with Speakeasy downtown in Wicker Park, and he put a beautiful mural from the Together and Together Again on my shoulder.
That's awesome.
So tattoos are important, man.
So if you talk to Billy Corgan again, let him know that he has some competition with Disarm. That was like one of my go-to songs. So I can get that high note with him. All right. So just saying, Billy, if you're listening, you want to come on and talk about UFOs. I know you're into all that stuff. Come on. Let's go. You're a Chicago guy. We're in Highland Park.
I
know, a couple ball guys.
Listen, here's the difference in podcasts. He's interviewing Gene Simmons and Tom Morello, and you're interviewing this. Sorry about your luck.
I win. Sorry, Billy. Get some real gas, man. I got some real stories here we're talking about. Okay, so you go through this journey through college baseball, from playing to coaching. You're taking your family on this journey with you as well. I'd imagine your if you have siblings and your mom and dad and aunts and uncles, they're all following this journey, and they're going, hey, he's got the competitive spirit from me, and he got the fastball from me. He throws the cutter because I taught him in the backyard, right? So they're all on there. So like probably your whole life leading up to that is centered around travel baseball, athletics, and this collegiate journey that you go on, right?
You said it perfectly, right? And I'm sure there's still some resentment from my sisters to this day. And if they could have back just half of the hours they spent on a bleacher their butt getting numb in a cold weather, right, they would be happy. But yeah, I don't think families realize, and certainly looking back on it now, the upheaval that it created when I was so dedicated to achieving a goal, right? And nowadays, right, there's even more pressure on young athletes because of social media and its existence and the amount of money that's being made. And the
investment.
Exactly.
Travel baseball is very expensive. I got 2 kids in travel baseball at the same time, and it was like I had to freaking drive Uber.
Yeah, we need more sponsors for the thing.
Gosh, like what is happening right now? So
I'm with you. So yeah, it is. It's a whole family investment. There's a lot that goes into it, but there's also a lot learned.
Yeah. So you decide it's time to come back to the corporate world to, I guess, get a real job, no longer coaching, right? So you land yourself somewhere where you could use some of the coaching skills, where you can use some of the administrative skills that you've learned, because coaching, there's a lot of admin to that, right, when you're coaching at a high level.
People don't realize that, yeah.
And you're still involved with the youth, all right, and you land at Park District.
Yeah, so that... I was still coaching in 2012, 2013. And, as you said, about 15 years or thereabout at the Division I level, you start to put things into perspective and realize that your trajectory as a professional and as an adult, you start to value things differently, like quality of life and, having free time, with all the things that go into dedicating your life to so long for something that's so demanding.
You were super linear.
Yeah.
Now you got to start to spread it out and develop who you are.
Exactly, right? And that's not to say I probably could have. And sometimes I look back going, what would have happened if? I don't regret, but what would have happened if? I probably could have stayed in the game and still been in it today. I still have great friends asking when I'm coming back, right? But that's not the path now for me. So yeah, in 2012, I met who's now my ex-wife, moved back to Chicago to be with her and start a family, and was fortunate, within less than a year of moving back home, found a landing spot at the Park District of Highland Park.
Okay.
In 2014, and I stopped working there in 2023. Received 8 or 9 promotions in 8 or 9 years, and started as a community baseball organizer, and then ended as the director of recreation.
Amazing.
And so that experience, again, was so valuable, taught me so much, what I didn't know about business, what I didn't know about really working in a governmental agency, not necessarily corporate. But, there were many aspects of it that were treated like corporate. And as I elevated through my career, right, having things like I had $7 million worth of a budget under my guide. I had 6 departments. I had an ice rink, and I had a nature center, right? So I had a lot of different things, where as a coach, I was managing budgets, but it wasn't that, right? And so understanding community development and understanding staff development, when I left the Park District of Highland Park, I had, I think, 6 direct reports under my guide, right? Never had that as a college baseball coach. Well, I had 18 pitchers under my guide. Yeah. It was a different dynamic, right? And so that experience was invaluable. I loved every minute of it in many ways. I regret how it came to an end, but as they say, everything happens for a reason. And I'm still very thankful for what I experienced in Highland Park.
So at Highland Park, you, as the top position you had gotten to, you're in charge of essentially like big parades and festivals and things that are going to happen in the community and throwing that. So what year was it? You had thrown a big parade, and
Yeah.
what happens?
Well, you're right. So as I elevated in my career, right, I started to become responsible, the director, of community-wide events. So I managed the recreation department, who was in charge of summer camps and big events. And for 6 years, as I elevated through my career, I was the co-chair of the 4th of July parade. It was a cooperative, I guess, exercise, if you will, between the city of Highland Park, the Park District of Highland Park, City Works, all these things,
and the small businesses in the community and the city. It's
what a 4th of July
bash, man.
Yeah, it's a bash.
And Highland Park, for those of you that are in different states, is a fairly affluent suburb of Chicago. It's there's a strong roots, middle class, right? But there's some upper middle class there as well. Hardworking people, great school system out there. Like it's just a great American suburb.
Yeah, it's a North Shore suburb of Chicago. Very, very affluent. Michael Jordan just sold his home in Highland Park.
You probably heard about that.
Yeah, exactly. Now they're selling shares of that, believe it or not.
Well, I mean, my gosh, I feel like, can you feel bad for Michael? I'm not sure it's possible. Like, but he hung on to that a little too long, I think, because he sold it for like $8 million less than he. Yeah,
I drove past that quite often, just thinking, what if, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, nevertheless, yes. So I was fortunate as I elevated through my career. I was assigned probably back in 2015 or 2016 to be the co-chair of the Independence Day Parade. So I represented the Park District.
It's a big deal for you.
Big deal, right? Yeah, I mean, and this was my first, probably back then, my first opportunity with cooperative agencies, governmental interactions, sister government event type things. And so it was a good experience for me, and I excelled at it, and I just kept doing it. Yeah. And up until COVID in 2020, of course, we didn't have the parade.
Yeah.
So for 4 or 5 years before that, I was the co-chair. I knew that parade inside and out. I was responsible for hiring all the entertainment, the bands on the floats, making sure all the floats were parked in the right spots. And then the morning of the parade, I was like the lead traffic director.
Yes, I knew air traffic control.
Exactly. I knew who went where and when and all these things. And so obviously 2020 happened and COVID shut the parade down. We didn't have it in 2021 again for the same reason. There was just too much uncertainty. And again, Highland Park, being, more on the liberal side of things, was very cautious in many ways when it came to COVID, and it ended up just fine. And so, the big plan was for 2022, we were going to have the 4th of July.
We're back,
parade.
Baby.
We're back. And, part of my story that I don't often tell is because I was at that point so high in my career, I wasn't supposed to be the co-chair that day. As a matter of fact, we had reassigned it to another employee who we thought was going to be able to handle the duties for the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, that employee resigned, got a new job in Indianapolis. And so within like 3 months, 4 months before the 4th of July, they're like, well, who else is left? Well, of course,
ball's back in your court.
Being a leader, and as I was, and I'm like, well, I'll handle it, And so I dove right back in and went into full, not panic mode, but full planning mode. And we got everything done. And
planning is panic for me.
In some ways, yeah, exactly right. Oh shit, what did I miss?
Wait a minute, I can't just be impulsive and just go for it. Like,
you gotta have a plan.
Yeah, I gotta have a plan. Yes, it turns out that if you want to get shit done, you do in fact have to plan.
Yes.
So I'm learning too. Yeah. All right, so
I went back into action. It was a co-chair of the parade once again. Started revamping all the meetings, doing all the things, and unfortunately as well, my counterparts with the city of Highland Park were new to their roles. So now I'm back in and I'm doing almost everybody.
You're like training.
Yeah, everybody on both sides, right? Yeah. And so, July 4th, 2022 happens. I get up as every 4th of July for the last 8 years, less COVID. And I'm the first one in Highland Park that day. And I'm placing all the placards for where the floats are supposed to park and people are starting to come and time is...
Man, this is like 4 a.m. probably.
I got there like 4:35. Yeah, that's how it works, and the parade starts at 10 o'clock. Yeah. And so... you make sure your staff is there on time to shut down all the streets properly. The police come at 7 to give the say something or see something, say something speech. The list goes on. And, 10 o'clock happens and we're in full ready to go mode. The parade starts. And, I should roll it back a little bit. Typically at 9:45, the morning of the parade, we have what was called a bike and pet parade. It was a kid parade.
Okay.
Parents can walk the parade with their kids on their bikes with their pets. There's no like organization to it. It's just like
it's Americana.
It's just Americana, right? Like, so just come and do it.
Come through the town, kids.
9:45, the bike and pet parade starts. Everything's going good. 10 o'clock comes. I'm the one who starts the parade. Of course, at the start of every parade, there's like 10 fire trucks, 10 squad cars, 10, the city's out in full fledged. The lights are going crazy. You know how
Hey, everybody, look at us.
Yeah, exactly. And so things are going well. And, 14 minutes later, I hear, a rat-a-tat-tat, and I kind of put my head down, and I had an employee that I worked for the last 5 or 6 years before that with, who I was her, I hate the word boss. I was accountable.
You were higher on the org chart.
I just say I was accountable for her.
Okay.
Right. And so I was accountable for her and her actions. And she looked at me in a panic and said, what do we do? What do we do?
Shots fired.
Yeah. And you heard it again one more time. And, at the time, I thought I heard it, and I was correct, fortunately, that they were coming from the Northwest. And so we had about 58 floats left within our control. We were less than a block and a half away from the shooter. And so we had to basically evacuate everybody on floats, kids.
The other way.
Yeah, south. Kids without their parents. You were just yelling and sending people south as fast as you could. And, after shots were fired like that, it was chaos for quite some time. And, I had many parents pleading for me to help find their kids who were supposed to be with their swim club. You drop your kid off at the parade, and you're going to go in the parade route, and they're with their coach. Well, you don't know who's been in the parade, what really happened. And my initial thought was, oh my God, they shot the bike and pet parade. I thought the kids were the first.
Yeah.
And, fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it, where the killer was perched that day, the bike and pet parade had passed, shot down from a perched position and took 7 lives. And so, for about 8 hours that day, I was on site. We had 13 of my staff members who were sheltering in place, and I committed to not leaving Highland Park until they were home safely as well. And I say all this because the killer was still on the loose.
Yeah.
It wasn't as if
It took some time.
It took about 10 hours. It wasn't until about 7 o'clock that night that he was apprehended. And so there was a lot of chaos, right? Like I said, we had 13 staff members sheltering in place, which I was able to locate within an hour and a half or thereabout, all their whereabouts. So I devised a plan with some rescue operations, the FBI, and we were driving down in a military-style tank on the streets of Highland Park. And you get these movie moments, right, where the person who was like a POW is saved, and everybody's hugging, and that's what it was like. There's all of these Army Rangers behind you making sure you're safe, and there's 5 or 6 18 to 22-year-olds walking out of a house
ultimately confident,
strangers home who was sheltering them because they didn't know who the killer was. And so at that point, everybody was assumed to be dangerous until you weren't,
So 7 were killed. How many injured?
Yeah, just under 50 were physically wounded.
Under 50 injured.
Yeah.
So if you want to dig a little deeper into this, all you have to do is Google Highland Park, July 4th, 2022, right? And it'll pop up. This went all over the news in the Chicagoland area. It made national news. But as strong as a person as you are, strong as a competitor, a leader, nobody's prepared for that.
No.
So
there's no play.
You're running on adrenaline at that point, like pure adrenaline. When does the adrenaline dump happen? Is it the next day? Is it that night? When do you just go and you have a second to yourself and you just kind of break and you go, what the heck? Where am I right? This is like Twilight Zone.
It happened that night. So finally, there were some other things that had to get done while the killer was being searched for. Excuse me. Not only did we have 13, staff members sheltering in place, from there we come to find out, because Highland Park has a public beach. Rosewood Beach is a beautiful beach. We come to find out that, at 2 o'clock or thereabout that day, even 4 or 5 hours after the shots were fired, there was about 80 people on the beach celebrating the 4th of July, partying.
Didn't have any idea?
Well, so again, what I volunteered to do with backup, with protection, was to go to the beach and evacuate it. So I went down to the beach as the director and went up to all these families who were barbecuing and drinking their beer and doing all their stuff. Hey, you need to go home. And, while majority of them weren't aware, right, some of them still were.
Yeah.
And it boggled my mind, because one thing that people will not know about Rosewood is the beach sits on a bluff, low, and there's
like a hillside.
Exactly right. There's a bluff above it that the park sits on, and there's just trees everywhere. And so it wasn't a safe location. And so we had to evacuate that beach at about 2:30. So there was just a lot of different tasks you would have never had to think about doing. And as you said, there's no playbook for recovery. And so it was about 6:30, 7 o'clock. I got home that night. My family at the time was away. I had just said, hey, go do your thing.
Dad's going to be gone.
Yeah. And so I got home, I took a shower, and I had my first panic attack in the shower that night. Yeah.
Okay. So if you're listening and you've ever had a panic attack, you can certainly relate to, when it's your first one, you literally have no idea what is happening. You can't control your breathing. You can't stop crying. You feel like you're going to suffocate. Your heart is racing. It feels like it's going to pop out of your chest. Your mind is bottlenecked. You can't, there's 9 million thoughts happening. You can't wrap your hands around any of them. You kind of know where the root of this is coming from, but you don't know where all this is coming from. When I say this, if you're listening, it's you're shaking. You just uncontrollable. You feel like somebody has taken over.
Yeah.
And so being somebody who's had panic attacks, they are terribly concerning, difficult. So you're there, and by the way, not great to be alone.
Yeah.
Terrible to be alone. So you're in the shower, you have a panic attack, you're alone. What do you do?
All I could think to do at the time was I got in the fetal position.
Yeah.
That's all I could think to do. And I went and I got in the fetal position. And, after, as I've learned, a panic attack technically can't last more than 2 minutes. It's the come down that's also difficult on the system. And so, I went through all that and didn't necessarily know, but knew, right? You're like, well, what I just experienced wasn't normal.
This is shock.
Fight or flight, seeing all of these things. And then my family got home and I kind of went back into dad mode, at the time. And I didn't sleep for 3 days.
So you went into dad mode and you're comforting them.
Yeah, it was more like, how was your day? It was more like as if nothing happened.
Yeah. So you just tucked it.
Yeah, particularly for my kids' sake. They had, at the time, I had contacted my family and my children had overheard some things, but not everything. And it really wasn't all that prevalent in conversation. At times it would pop up, but I was just more like normal.
Okay, so there wasn't a first phone call, you reached out to dad or uncle or best friend or somebody like that and just hey, I can't breathe right now.
No, that time I did it alone. Yeah, and probably for quite some time I experienced it alone, right? I just didn't, and the weird thing was I wasn't experiencing them at the time.
Yeah.
In Highland Park, right? I was experiencing them all more so in my own controlled environment. Where
you could let yourself,
or I could be me, right? I was in my basement. I was doing, I was up late at night, and things would get carried away, or, different things would trigger me, or whatever the case may be. So yeah, I kept it together, and I went back to work July 5th, and I mentioned earlier, and when you were so kind in complimenting my style, you hear that I got style.
I still believe it.
But as a coach, right? Here's what I'll say: as a player,
you got back on the bump.
Right. But not only that, you had appearance expectations. You were told you had to wear Nike shoes. You're right. You
got to be on brand, man.
Exactly right. When you're in the airport as a team, you had to wear the same jumpsuits.
Yes.
Right. All of these things. And then as a coach, right, you're being sponsored by Nike. You have all of these expectations of how you're representing the university.
You're a billboard.
Exactly right. Fast forward, I get to the Park District of Highland Park, right? A little bit more loose, right? But it was business casual. Summers were more casual with shorts, but there was no ability to express yourself through something as simple as a t-shirt or a jacket or a hat, right?
Yeah.
Not to say every business is suitable to wear a Pearl Jam hat. I get that. But there was still some control mechanisms there, right? July 5th comes and we had, the day after the shooting, and we had a peer support group established. We were so lucky. The First Responders Wellness Center is a very great therapy clinic here that only serves first responders. And I was fortunate because of my experience. I was considered one that day, and I was gained their services. So they hosted this peer support group. And I remember not sleeping, of course, the night before, having been on the phone with everybody and anybody who wanted to talk at 4 a.m. or whatever the case would be. being like, what am I doing? Like, so I legitimately put a Pearl Jam t-shirt on. I threw on some shorts and some Jordans, and I had a hat on, and I just went to this peer support group.
Almost like you just changed who you were.
Yeah. Well,
like,
I was always this guy, but there was some level of perception that had to be kept.
But something like that, it's impossible for it to not change you, where you're like, okay, some of these things that were hyper important to me, like being on brand and dressing business casual, they kind of just don't matter.
They never matter in the first place.
But now they really don't matter.
Exactly that. You said it beautifully, right? They just don't matter. And once again,
it's the matrix.
It is exactly that. And again, I talk, and when I speak, how much more comfortable would one be if they're able to just express themselves with tact, right? In a sales environment.
Oh, God,
how much more confident would one be?
That the way with tact. Yeah. That's the caveat. You have to add that, because that this whole thing of
you can't wear like a I love MILFs t-shirt.
No,
that's exactly right.
No, like this whole you do you narrative, I'm not so sure I completely agree with that. I think be vulnerable, be authentic, but with tact.
Yeah.
That you have to be aware of your surroundings. And there are some things that just are not, within appropriate.
Yeah.
But you still should be able to completely express yourself with intact.
Exactly.
So that's great that you said that. And I believe this because we talk about social media, and I'm all about building a brand. You're clearly about building a brand, over 10,000 followers on LinkedIn, close to 20,000, if not more, across all social media platforms. You're getting your message out there. You're doing all of your things. By the way, if you're not following, like, wake up. What are we doing over here, people? We got the leather jacket, the Pearl Jam hat, and an amazing story. We need to be following. Okay, so let's follow. But the idea of a salesperson breaking the matrix of everything that has been taught and just being authentically themselves, that is the best closing technique that you could possibly have. It's not something that you were coached in a sales class to say this at this moment. It's to be ultra human to the point where people feel like they know you, like you, and trust you. And as Dale Dupree talks about, be a rebel. Like, push it, but within tact, right? It's got to be relevant to the situation. So I love that you said that, because it's so important.
Yeah. And listen, what people may not know about you and I, we didn't meet because we have a business commonality. We didn't meet because, we were trying to sell something to one another. We met because something on LinkedIn about the Bears.
Yeah, the Bears hired Ben Johnson. And I commented, fire emoji, LFG, capitalized, fire emoji. You responded, let's go, or something like that back. And then I went immediately to your profile, like, hey, this is cool. Who's this? And then from there, it was DMs.
Yeah.
And then a call.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think even on my introduction in LinkedIn, it's like, I love my family, friends, Pearl Jam, the Bears, and the Blackhawks, right?
Maker of money is your first line. It's like maker of money, and then it's like auctioneer, and then it's like Pearl Jam family, athlete.
And speaking of Pearl Jam too, right? In business, because in some form or fashion it always comes up, or I am silly enough wearing a hat. I love Pearl Jam. And you could tell they don't often get to talk about what that excites them in those types of environments.
Yeah.
So think about in a business conversation, you break the ice with, hey, how many Pearl Jam shows have you been? Oh my God, right?
Immediate comment.
Exactly right.
Connection.
Exactly right. And it's, for me, it bode well when I was a recruiting coordinator, finding connection with the athletes I was recruiting, the parents that I was asking for their trust, have their young man come play for us, etc. Right? Having that connection in any forms of life is so important, but it requires people to be vulnerable and be their true self.
And the other thing that drew us to each other is the conversation about mental health, which I've been told by people, organizations, inner circle, you don't need to do that. Be a man. Don't talk about it. Don't say it. All this stuff. Finally, I just said, forget it. I'm going to completely be myself, and I'm going to speak my truth. And in doing that, it's been nothing but connections with people that are hiding it and love the fact that it was spoken and now feel comfortable in doing so. And now we have that common ground. And that was another thing that we established common ground on, was the fact that, look, we're both former athletes. We're both podcasters.
We're both people that have no problem standing up in front of 400 people in a room. We also are both people that have panic attacks and have to get into the fetal position every once in a while because we've had some PTSD of things that have happened in our life. Yours far more tragic than mine, but nonetheless, it's all what it is to each human being.
Yeah, I want to stop you right there. And so, one of the things I also speak about, and you could imagine, John, right? When I naturally in passing kind of share my story, not that I get into the nitty gritty of it, but yeah, I was in a mass shooting, right? People immediately go,
ooh.
And then the comparison comes in, just as you just said, not as tragic as being in a mass shooting, right? And I want to stop you right there and let anybody who's listening know that what the worst thing you went through is the worst thing.
Yeah.
And right. And so whether you were in a mass shooting, you were physically assaulted, you were an immigrant that had assimilation issues, whatever the trauma you experienced that was the most impactful, it's not any more or less important than what I went through, because that's just a human.
In your world, it's well, thank you for giving me that. I appreciate that.
It's so true, right? Like, and I say that, and I would never wish anybody else in this world has to go through a mass shooting, just like I'm sure you wish nobody else would have to go through what you experience on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
Because there are more people who probably experience what you've experienced than what I have.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, there's more people that have experienced the aftermath of what we deal with on a day in, day out basis.
Yeah.
That don't talk about it. And because of that, they continue to find themselves in spirals. And the therapy is actually the talking about it. It's getting it out, because you start to be able to understand it. You start to be able to impact other people. You find community. You find relevance. You realize that that was meant to happen for one reason or another. Are you going to do good with it, or are you going to wallow in it? And you've chosen to do good with it. And I'm trying to follow suit and doing the same. So we've got
I'm following your lead, brother. And what I'll say, right, is part of my story, and I shared earlier, I was very fortunate, and you talked about therapy. I was very fortunate the day after my experience to be thrown into a peer support group and have that at my disposal. I was even more fortunate, 3 or so days after my experience, to be introduced to a gentleman by the name of Todd Blylevin. We had some mutual friends through baseball, nonetheless. And
Todd's father is Bert Blylevin.
Correct. Yeah.
Pitched, by the way, amazing pitcher for the Minnesota Twins, I want to say.
Yeah.
Amazing starting pitcher on the Kirby Puckett teams, right? Yep. Like pretty powerhouse teams.
And you might know, if you're a Twins fan out there listening, Circle Me Bert, right? He was the color guy for the Twins for so long, and they had this Circle Me Bert shtick that he did. And
so this is he's kind of a baseball legend.
He is a legend.
And Todd, his son, has the baseball connection with you, but also
So I was Todd introduced himself to me through a mutual connection when I was coaching at Iowa. I won't get into that, but Todd was so vulnerable in reaching out to me out of the blue via text to introduce himself, who he is, what he's doing, and unfortunately, Todd was a survivor of the 2017 Las Vegas mass shooting.
Unreal.
And similar to me, he was on site for 8 hours. He had his own experience, which is his story to tell. But I will tell you, he's a hero in many ways, and I look up to him in so many other ways that he even knows about. But
he was like on a battlefield.
Yeah, he was in a really tough situation, and he shared his story. He was featured on MLB.com. There was a lot of attention, and he's still suffering to this day. 8 years later now. And so, to his credit, he reached out to me and he offered a shoulder to cry on, an ear to bend, and I took advantage of it.
Somebody who could relate.
And so, in essence, and I say this, wasn't structured, wasn't with a doctor or a therapist. We had a peer support group, right?
Probably the best way.
The best way possible. And for about a year or so, he and I were just friends. He lives in Dallas. I live obviously here in the Chicagoland area. And there wasn't a day that went by, a call didn't happen, a text didn't occur. And we just leaned on each other. We empowered each other to be vulnerable, to share what we were really thinking, what we were going through. He encouraged me to go through EMDR therapy, which I went through, which was a huge help. I also went through brain spotting. He encouraged, the list went on and on. And the reason why I'm so glad we talked about my part of my story being an athlete early on in my life is because I was fortunate. I didn't have the anxiety. I didn't have the mental hurdles that
you had learned how to center that.
Not only learned, but I don't know that I had that challenge presented to me. It wasn't ingrained in my DNA. I don't know that I was born with anxiety or didn't develop, whatever the case may be. And I was able to overcome some of that through competition, through skills, all of these things. And so I had to learn myself to be vulnerable and to really open up. And Todd really allowed for me to do that. I mean, I can't tell you. I mean, you asked earlier about having people to call. I call my dad religiously now when I have a panic attack. Yeah. He's my guy.
I was going to ask you who that calls.
Yeah, but Todd has been and will remain that person, right? And early on in my experience, because I didn't want to burden others who hadn't experienced something like me, when I was having a panic attack, I would go to him immediately and he would talk me down, calm me through some breathing exercises. The list went on and on. So having that peer support was so integral in my healing journey. And for him, I'll forever be grateful. But there still was a lot to learn.
So 2023, you're still there.
Yeah.
You're missing work because these things are happening at work.
Well, no. So unfortunately, probably the curse of being an athlete and grinding.
You keep going back.
And grinding through things is exactly that, right? I went to work on July 5th. And I didn't stop going to work until April 5th of 2023. So I went to work essentially for 10 and a half straight months, being triggered daily, being in the community of which I was traumatized.
Mentally injured.
Yeah, mentally injured. And unfortunately, because of my role in the parade, a great story I tell to give people an insight. And people may not think of this story as impactful, but what I'll say is because I was the co-chair of the parade, the experience was July 4th, 2022. At the end of August that year, so a month and a half later, I got an email asking about a blue drum. Somebody had found, as the chaos ensued and people were running and shedding all of their materials. There were strollers and people didn't care at that point.
Just drop and go.
Drop and go. And so another business in town had picked up this drum for some reason. And they felt it my responsibility to find whose drum this was. And so you just start to think about, well, who are they alive? All of these things. And so something as simple as a drum, right, in my role was very triggering. We would
hook you right back
on a daily basis. We would, again, in my role at the Park District, and rightfully so, at no fault of anybody's, right? Because once again, there's no playbook. But I would go into emergency planning meetings about sheltering in place when there's an active shooter in a facility, having been a mass shooting survivor just months earlier, right? And so all of these things were just getting more and more heavy, and I wasn't dealing with them well. I was fine. I was so much worried about my staff. I talk about having 7 or 8 direct reports under me. Well, guess what? They were all present there that day too. Yeah. So as a leader, what is my first thought? Are they okay?
Yeah.
Never looking after myself.
So you're trying to put the mask on them, like on the airplane. I've talked about this on several podcasts. They say that, hey, in case there's altitude, the mask comes down, put it on yourself first.
Yeah.
And then that way you have a chance of helping others.
Of course.
You were putting it on everyone else and neglected yourself.
Beyond belief. Yeah. Right? Beyond belief. So much so that I was having panic attacks. I was not valuing what my lived experience was. I was just intermittently dabbling in therapy to appease others because people told me, hey, you should probably go talk to somebody.
Well, you're a tough
What are you talking about?
A tough pitcher. You're an ex-coach.
Exactly right.
You're a leader. What do you mean? Just get back in the saddle, right?
Exactly right. And, that wore heavy on me for, again, 10 and a half months or so. And I wasn't my best self. I certainly wasn't present in many relationships. I wasn't thriving personally. All the impacts that one would expect, I was case in point.
You're living it.
Yeah. And so unfortunately on April 4th, 2023, there was another gun-related incident in Highland Park. It was unfortunately, the Covenant School shooting in Nashville occurred late March of 23. And the students at Highland Park High School had planned a peaceful protest April 4th, 2023, which was 9 months to the day of our experience. But they were peacefully protesting what just occurred in Nashville, what we had experienced in Highland Park ourselves. And so everybody knew it was happening. It was a planned thing. We were in a meeting, our C-suite, our executive team at the Park District at that time. We're in a meeting talking business or doing as we should. And I got a text that the high school was in lockdown.
Oh my gosh.
And so what happened was, apparently and allegedly, when all the students exited the school and then chose to come back in, there were several young men wielding guns making threats. And so, unfortunately, because we were a governmental agency at the Park District, when one government facility, i.e. a school, the city hall, locks down, you all lock down. And so being the director and being the first with this information, I sprung into action and led a lockdown. In our admin center that day, we had preschool in our facility. We had to assign staff members to various doors. The list went on and on. It was about 2.5 hours. The lockdown finally got lifted. And that was the first time I had a panic attack in my office. And so on April 4th, 23, I had a panic attack in my office for the first time. I'll never forget. One of my coworkers overheard because I was so concerned about perception, and I ran to my office by myself to have this panic attack, and it was, as you so beautifully described, having a panic attack. Like, great job on that, by the way. That was really good.
Lived it.
Yeah, no, I could tell. That's why
live it.
I was getting goosebumps.
And, by the way, I've had them at work.
Yeah,
and it's the fact that you're having a panic attack at work makes you want to have a panic attack.
Yes. Exactly right.
Because you're like, I can't believe this is happening.
Mm-hmm. What's going to happen?
Everyone's going to see this. Now I'm not fit to work. Everything that I built as a personal brand is now in question.
Exactly right.
That's what you're thinking, which is not really good to kind of calm it down.
No, it adds fuel to the fire, right? It gets that concoction, that emotional potion, ready to explode even higher, right? And so, for the first time, I had a panic attack in my office, and I was fortunate a coworker overheard me. She came in, consoled me, rubbed my back, got me water, did all the things, right? Did all the things.
Good for her.
Yeah, I'm forever grateful for her. Roxanne, I won't say her last name for other reasons, but she was a godsend that day. And
the police made a song about her. That time's cool she is. Hey, you don't have to put on the red light, Roxanne. Right?
No, she was so kind that day and did everything she could to make sure I was okay. And about an hour or so after things calmed down, I went home, and foolishly enough, for the next 2 days I didn't sleep, but I still kept going to work.
Mm-hmm. Dude.
And so the 4th of April, I believe, was a Tuesday. I went to work Wednesday and Thursday without sleep. Finally, on Friday, I broke. And I was like, I have to do something. I have to stay home. I have to try and sleep. Whatever the case would be. Got some sporadic sleep in here or there. Called off work on the Monday. And went to work, called off work. Decided I was going to go see my general practitioner. To just have a conversation about, like, I'm not sleeping. Like, what can you do to help me? And I didn't know any better, but that's who I went to. My GP. That's who I'd always saw. My general practitioner. He's the guy who gives me that checks my prostate, and I'm out.
Where do I go now?
Mr. Glove Eye.
I take it easy.
But, so that's where I went. And, I explained to him what I had experienced over the last year and what had just happened. And he immediately went to prescribing me Xanax and sertraline. Now, for those that don't know, Xanax is a very, very, very heavy sedative, helps calm you down from your panic attacks, will put you to sleep within an hour. The list goes on and on, highly addictive. Sertraline is more of an antidepressant that helps curb mood swings and helps. Exactly.
Low level.
Now, I say all these things because, once again, I had never taken any mental health medication in my entire life.
IT decision makers, this might sting. Frustrated with IT issues, security threats, and the stress of your technology infrastructure, your technology should blend seamlessly with your business objectives. Technology infrastructure management with limited resources can be exhausting and counterproductive. Do you have an MSP but still have problems and technical hiccups? GSD's advisement, proactive maintenance, cutting-edge cybersecurity, cloud solutions, data backup, and local 24/7 help desk can change the game. Your technology should outpace your business operations to allow for growth, and proactive strategies should prevent issues before they arise. Get back your time and your money with GSD. Drive business forward. Leave the technology to GSD. GSDnow.com.
Here I was.
By the way, it takes a bit to kick in. So you take it and you're like, why isn't it working?
Exactly.
Why isn't it working?
Mm-hmm. And so I looked at him and I had said, Xanax, like, I'm not taking Xanax. What
Don't you know who I am?
Exactly right. Like, I go to too many I'm just kidding. But like,
I was in the front row in 1999.
Yeah, exactly. So I had asked him point blank, like, what else can be done?
Yeah, there's got to be something else.
And so he had said, I could put you on FMLA, right? And that's what he said. And I said, what does that mean? Now, here's how stupid, and I say this facetiously, but here's how traumatized and how out of it I was at the time. I knew what FMLA was. I was a director. I had employees under my guide. I put people on FMLA all the time.
Thinking.
Yeah. I'm like, well, what does that mean for me, right? Well, it gets you out of work, and that's all I cared about because I wanted to stop going to Highland Park.
Permission. I needed permission to not go to work.
I wanted to stop going to Highland Park.
Yeah.
I needed to be out of that community for a time. I needed to get my bearings about me.
Or just period.
Exactly.
Like you just got to break the cycle because now that's every time you get in your car and you go back to that place, it's a reminder.
Yeah, I would cross. I mean, I would cross Waukegan Road at times and
yeah.
You know, and I liken it to, and here's what I'll say, right? And this is not to compare, but this is just to provide some relativity. If we knew a woman who was sexually assaulted in a shopping mall, we would never encourage that woman to go back to that shopping mall. No. We would understand.
Yeah.
And we would support, hey, let's go to the mall 50 minutes away.
Yeah.
Because...
Or maybe just shop online.
Exactly right. Or think about the poor teachers who have experienced some of these horrific school shootings.
And then got to go back to that same classroom.
Not only the same classroom, but they have to do the same career. Think about that. A 20-year teacher who knows nothing but teaching, who just saw, unfortunately, some of her most prized children
that she's accountable to.
You think she's going to be able to go back into a classroom and just teach as if nothing happened? Yeah. No, there's a lot of work that needs to be done.
Oh, yeah.
And so similar to me, right, I was expected to go back into that environment. I just needed to get out. I didn't know that I needed to get out permanently, and I was fortunate to be relieved of my duties, and we'll get into that as best I can. But so I took the FMLA. I committed 6 weeks of a mental health crash course, doing everything within my power, talking about controlling what you can control before I got on medicine. So I did the diet, the exercise, the natural sunlight. I did it all, man. Like I did the
journaling, talking it through, breathing,
therapy every day,
triangular breathing. Right?
I was doing it all.
Yeah.
And in about 6 weeks, I still wasn't where I wanted to be. And then I said, okay, I need to at least pursue and educate myself about medicine. So I saw an actual psychiatrist at that time, and I told him what was going through, and we did exactly that. You know, what's the right dosage of sertraline, and what's the right dosage of this, and we got to a point that was very, very, very healthy for me, and he was a godsend as well, right? But like you needed all these things, and so I was on FMLA throughout the summer, April, May, June. I was hoping to go back, frankly, at the end of June. And I started having very violent panic attacks because at that point it was coming on to be the 1-year anniversary of my experience. The 4th of July was right around the corner, and people are celebrating, and understandably and rightfully so. Like, one can't think that others aren't going to put an American flag up next door because of what I experienced, right? But it was very heavy for me. And so through my psychiatrist, you know, he had essentially recommended that I take some extra time to get through all of the chaos of the 4th of July, the 1-year anniversary, the news. I mean, it was just...
Yeah, this was all over.
It was, I mean, Kamala Harris, I mean...
Helicopters.
Yeah, it was a big thing.
It was huge.
Yeah, and so took some time through July. You know, part of my story that people don't know is I actually went back to work the month of August, 2023. And there was many reasons for that. I can't get into them for legal reasons, but what I can say is I tried. Yeah. And I being a 10-year professional, working in Parks and Rec explicitly for one organization, was also fearful of, oh my God, what's next for me? If I can't go back here,
what am I going to do?
And do that and make this money, what is really going to happen to me? So I made the attempt. I went back for a month. It was horrible. Absolutely horrible. I had to be pulled back out. My panic attacks were increasing. The intensity was unbearable at times. And finally, in September, I was put back on an FMLA. And ultimately, through legal matters and what I will say are things beyond my control, ultimately I was let go at the end of December 2023 for what was cited as an indefinite request of leave of absence. And unfortunately, I ended a 9.5-year career of serving that community and that organization, having no regrets, but, going away on not some great terms.
Yeah.
But now I'm able to look back on it in fondness. And
everything works out for a reason. You have a higher calling. There's a bigger plan for you. You don't know that when it's happening.
No, I did. And listen, I did not. Like, I was like, oh my God, my world is crumbling. And
9 years, several promotions. I worked my ass off. I've got to this point. Like, I got
the equity. I got my own office.
Like, look at what the heck. And then this happens, and everyone talks about like, well, everything happens for a reason, and I fully agree with that. But you don't know that in the present. Like they say, be present. Well, in the present, this hurts.
Yeah, I mean,
like this hurts bad. I'll get to the future where I can look back and go, okay, that happened for a reason. But for right now, this sucks.
It sucked. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. It was awful. And, I at the time, I was a husband. I'm still a father, but, you think about providing, you think about what others will think of you. The list
all
goes,
the things that you need, and you're struggling mentally.
Yeah, exactly right. You know what I'm saying? And so I ultimately got let go, and I didn't accept that. And I called attention to what was, I think, unjustly being done to me. And as time went on, I ultimately settled on a lawsuit and won a case. And haven't looked back quite since. But what you mentioned, and I never said, and I referred to, but it wasn't healthy for me to be in Highland Park in general. Looking back on it, I know that now. And I did myself personally a disservice. I did my children a disservice because I wasn't as good of a dad as I could have been during those months when I was forcing myself to go to Highland Park and such. But, they did me a favor, man. Like, I might still be hanging on to that employment.
Exactly.
Had they not separated
and
me.
Probably not performing at your max
Yeah,
level.
Exactly right. And so they did me a favor. Looking back on it, they also did probably what they had to do from a liability risk perspective. And I wish it were different. It isn't, but I got bigger and better things ahead of me.
Yeah. We want to think that we really matter to an organization. We want to think that we really are fully important to that organization. What I've learned in my time in business is no matter how many records you break, no matter how many numbers you put up on a scoreboard, no matter how much you build a brand, you're replaceable.
Luka Doncic just got traded, man.
What the French?
I'm telling you.
I mean, come on. Like, there's only a few people on earth I'm not so sure are replaceable. Michael Jordan would be one. Eddie Vedder would be a pretty difficult person to replace. But
thank you for dropping him in, by the way.
Yeah, you get my point. But yeah, I've come to the realization that everybody is replaceable, which is why you got to do as much as you possibly can while you're in the role that you're in, and then you just got to deal with the consequences. But very similar to you, I was going back to a place after kind of getting the corrective action, and it just kept reminding me of that place. And little did they know, while I was appearing to be better and working on myself, I was literally having panic attacks on the way into work.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and then I got to clean myself up and then walk in and be like, hey, gonna record a podcast today and do a tour with some customers. By the way, I was crying in the parking lot 25 minutes ago, right? And, I'm not going to tell that to anybody, but here I am telling that to people because I've set myself free through truth, which is a beautiful thing. You've set yourself free through truth. And that's just absolutely amazing. So super courageous, mad respect for you. The story goes on, though. This is we haven't even gotten to the good part.
I guess.
Right? So if it
the good part.
Yeah, I guess. So if you're writing a book, I don't know if we got to the climax yet. Maybe that's the climax.
No.
I don't know. But it's certainly the build up. So now, as you put it, it feels terrible in the moment. When you look back, you can make an argument that they were doing the best thing for them. You could also make an argument that it's not very human.
That's the main argument.
Yeah.
That's the main
I was
argument.
trying to be nice,
Listen, business isn't always humane.
No, it certainly is not. So you find yourself now out of work, dealing with major mental health issues, and take us from there.
Yeah. So it was essentially, leading up to that point, and I referred to Todd Blyleven, he and I had conversed at length about doing something through our experiences and finding ways to express what we went through, but in a manner that wasn't so focused on gun control. He and I made
That's so true.
And
everything is about the gun control.
Listen, and what I'll tell you, and understandably so, again, I don't fault anybody, I don't judge.
Yeah.
Right? Like we all have our own interests and demons, right? And I'm no one to judge anybody.
That's a political.
So what happens a lot, right? And as you can imagine, as a mass shooting survivor, I've done a lot of research. I learn, I understand what's being said about these experiences, relate them to my own so we can learn, so I can help others, etc. Unfortunately, what happens and what I've realized oftentimes and with mass shootings is that the immediate conversation goes to the polarizing of guns. And this happened because of gun control. Inevitably, it then swings slowly to the mental health conversation, but not the mental health of the survivors.
No.
It's the mental health of the perpetrator. What was so crazy about this individual that they wanted to do
So now
that?
you're alienating the people that feel...
And here's the thing, right? And that no fault of your own, and this is natural, right? You asked me how many people died. Well, 7 died. How many people were physically shot? Well, there was about 48. How many people were present? And how many of those people have mental health issues? Right? That gets lost in translation. And the resources aren't present or even established to understand what's needed in a situation like this. And so I say all these things because Todd and I took the peer support mentality of how can we uplift others, not only mass shooting survivors, but what can we do to allow people and give them permission to be vulnerable? And so we chose to start alongside a doctor of psychology, Dr. Vanetta LaRosa, what we call the Walking Tall movement. And our mission is essentially to inspire all of humanity to be more approachable, vulnerable, and to walk tall in their lives.
So check out www.walkingtallmovement.com, just as it sounds.
Yeah, thank you.
And hop on there. By the way, got some swag on there that's all kinds of swaggy, and I love my green. So
I'm gonna send you a care package.
The link will be in the bio, but I would imagine that you're selling this swag because it's going towards the movement and it's going to a good cause and it's helping people, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So how we chose to establish our movement was by design in some form or fashion. We unveiled our group, if you will. We're a group of 3 people: Dr. LaRosa, Todd, and I. By way of podcast, similar to how you present your stuff.
Does that work?
So far, so good.
Hey,
and what we
show works.
Yeah, and what we chose is, early on we focused on ourselves. Todd so beautifully told his story in a 90-minute format on a podcast about his experience in Vegas. I told mine in Highland Park. Dr. LaRosa made herself extremely vulnerable, talking about some of her eating disorder history. And that's how we kind of introduced ourselves. From there,
leading from the front.
Exactly right. And proving that vulnerability is strength and exuding that and exhibiting that on a daily basis. And from there, we've had some great guests on our show, people who have experienced some traumatic experiences of which I would have never wished on myself or anybody else for that matter. But we focus on the triumphant return and the walking tall through the tragedy but also calling people to be extremely vulnerable and sharing their story and tell the deep, dark secrets of what they went through so that others know they're not alone themselves. We had an individual share his 7 suicide attempts. Unfortunately, he was never successful and is now a doctor, right? You have people like this.
Yeah.
And the reason being...
What a great thing to fail at.
Yeah. If you're going to fail at one thing, that's it.
Fail at that.
Yeah, please.
Just be terrible at that.
And, when it comes to suicide, and I have conversations with great people, people much more smarter in that arena than I, but when I talk about suicide, I say it's always an option. It's just not the option, right? We don't want to be so naive to think that it's never going to happen. We have to educate and we have to empower others to not think that that's the option for them, right? But yes, if you're going to fail at something, please fail at that.
So this is pretty quickly this happens, right? Like
super quick.
Like August, you're out.
No,
or was it April?
No, so it happened almost concurrently in some respect. Because at the time, the Walking Tall movement was thought to be just a passion project. I was still employed by the Park District at the time.
Yeah.
I gained employee approval to do this.
Okay, so you went to them and said, "Hey, I got to do this.
I'm doing a podcast."
Okay,
and they were supportive.
They're like, cool. All right, all right.
And believe it or not, coworkers were buying merchandise and using Walk Tall as a moniker. And it was it was awesome.
So you start to catch the bug. You're like, okay, we're on to something here.
Yeah. And then unfortunately I got let go.
Yeah.
And
so it was already going.
But it was just a passion project. It was just something.
Well, you found some purpose to like distract you positively.
And uplift others and share my story.
Help one person, it's worth it, right?
That's what we've said since day one.
Yeah.
You know, if we could help one person, our sharing of our story is well worth it.
Yeah. What's the value? What's the cost of one life?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, we should be trying to move mountains for one life.
I would agree with that, you know, and so ultimately what happened is this was taking shape of its own. We were still doing shows. We were interviewing great guests. I was becoming more and more active on social media, but for the Walking Tall movement, I was never on LinkedIn. I was never, I didn't have any reason to be on social media.
There's not a lot of pitching coaches on LinkedIn.
And
then when you go to the Park District, there's probably not a huge reason to be on LinkedIn.
Not at all.
All of a sudden you're like, whoa, I'm building a brand.
Well, here's what I'll say. Contrary to that statement, I would agree with you, but if positioned properly, there is a reason as a pitching coach. There is a reason as a Park District professional to be on LinkedIn.
Well, I'd make an argument that my 15-year-old needs to get on LinkedIn right now because that's going to make him super hireable when he gets out of college, and he's already got 1,200 followers on LinkedIn, and he's been creating content once a month. Just if a 15-year-old or an 18-year-old, let's just take an 18-year-old freshman in college, built a profile and posted about their journey at the business university. And they just every day they posted, hey, I'm on my way to class. Here's what we're learning. And they put that on LinkedIn. You know how many recruiters that are internal recruiters at businesses would be like, get that kid in here immediately for an interview? We don't even care what the grades are. The personal brand is built, understands the idea of marketing and business. And by the way, if they want to get into sales or anything tip of spear, they're already started. Like, so you're right.
And what I'll say is when I speak, particularly I speak at times to college baseball programs, understandably so, right? There's a natural relatability there. Yeah. And one of the things I encourage those young men to do is get off of Twitter and Instagram.
Some money there.
There's things to be gained, right? There's connections to be made. But you're in college to earn a degree to get a career. And why aren't you playing in the platform that's intended to help build your career?
And by the way, it's the platform that started for recruiters to find talent. Like, it's pretty much a vlog resume.
Yeah. Or if you're not so as extrinsic as maybe you or I are, as a young college student, you don't have to create content, but you can engage.
Support other people. Be seen.
The so-called experts that you want a letter of reference from, or you just want to network with, or you just want them to know you're alive. Like a like and a comment goes so far. And so just that, right? I actually go and encourage, and I'll teach for an hour or so, college student athletes, particularly the ins and outs of LinkedIn, because they don't know it.
You were heavy on it yesterday. You made more comments on posts than you put out. I mean, you put out 2 or 3 posts yesterday, but I would imagine you probably commented on 40.
Well, yeah.
You were pretty active on it yesterday.
Well, part of that is not only because of what my personal branding is, but it's also just who I am, which goes one and the same. And who would I be, and how would I be a good representation of Walking Tall if I didn't work to uplift others?
Yeah.
And I recognize and understand that people put work into their content. People aspire to help others through what they're doing. And so it is impactful if you're not getting engagement. It does hurt. I've been there. Like,
on you.
I put all this time into this post and nobody, so when I have the time and something resonates, or there's a person that I know, like, and trust, I will do my best as always.
Before you walked in here, I was talking to the sales team and I said, look, it's real easy. The first problem with salespeople is that we are impatient. And we lead with an ask, and that is a major problem. That's not how human beings actually interact.
Yep.
We want to lead with a give. So one of the salespeople said to me, hey, look, I sent a DM. I did exactly how you wrote it. And their only response was likewise. What do I do now? And I said, you go to their profile page, you pull up their last 5, 6, 10 posts, you watch the video, read the posts, understand them. You like and comment. The comment needs to have some substance to it, and you be patient. And I said, look at all of their content. So we pulled up this gentleman's content. 8 likes, 9 likes, 7 likes. I said, imagine if that person an hour from now lifts up their phone, looks at their LinkedIn, and there's a red bubble next to it that says 20.
Mm-hmm.
You know, normally their red bubble says 1. Now it says 20. And it's you liking and commenting on all of their posts.
Yeah.
And you do that for about a week. And you do it with real substance. Like you genuinely are creating commonality. You're really supporting them. When you then send a note to them like, hey, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm really enjoying your content. Keep at it. You give them a note of encouragement. How hard do you think it is to ask for a 15-minute Zoom call 2 days later?
Yeah, it's more about, here's what you've done for me. Keep going.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, and our aspiration was and always will be just to help one person. But getting those notes of appreciation, of encouragement,
it means something.
And it's proof of concept, right? And what people don't realize is those unsolicited messages from strangers, which I get more and more of, is unsolicited proof of concept.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives you empowerment to keep going.
Yes.
Not that we as humans should need others' approval, but at least proves to you you're on the right track.
Sure as hell feels good, though.
It feels you're on the right track, right? Because you could spin your wheels, and we could bang our head against the wall until, we have a bruise as big as the United States, thinking Walking Tall movement's going to catch wind, and it goes nowhere, right? Fortunately, that hasn't been the case, but knowing and having people be vulnerable to say, hey, that was impactful.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that goes such a long way in business and in life.
So salespeople see so much rejection. So if I'm going to get rejection, at least I'm going to feel good that I did something, So if I'm always in that greed mindset of the ask and I fail, then it's easy for me to then go, well, that guy's a jerk, or that gal's mean, or she doesn't understand, or he's rude. But if I give, even if they go, hey, look, I'm not interested, I don't think there's anything here for it, I still know that I, for 2 weeks, supported their content, lifted them up. I still see them on the feed. I'm going to keep supporting them,
of course,
because I just want to be a good person. It makes me feel good to make somebody else feel good. And then eventually, when the opportunity presents itself, then I got another crack at it. So you're catching all of this now as you're building out your brand, Walking Tall movement. You're starting to build the brand. You're starting to find your legs. You're starting to collaborate with people that, like Todd, that understand it, and the doc that is being vulnerable and gets it. Things are you're starting to create some attention. So, what is like the first big thing that happens for Walking Tall movement where you go, okay, we got a brand here. We got something.
Yeah. So, I was a guest on a podcast called The Beacon Way. When I was an early infant, if you will, on LinkedIn and making, and creating this brand, if you will, or creating this mantra, right? This movement, right? And I was so lucky. Again, I don't know how, why, who, what, when, where.
They saw your content.
Somebody saw my content.
Yeah.
And I was invited to be a guest on the Beacon Way podcast. Beacon Media and Marketing is an agency out of Anchorage, Alaska, believe it or not. And they are essentially one of the nation's top marketing firms for mental health companies in the United States.
So as soon as you subscribe to the Get Shit Done experience, we need you to go subscribe to them.
Yeah, the Beacon Way, Jennifer and Adrian are the founders. They're amazing women. They're still in my circles closely to this day. But I was fortunate to be a guest on the Beacon Way podcast. I told my story in some form or fashion at the time. I don't even know how that shaked out because that was so long ago now.
Whirlwind.
Yeah, right. But whatever I did that day resonated with them. And I was so lucky. We were so lucky because Beacon has a large influence on what's called the National Mental Health Marketing Conference.
Got it.
Beacon, believe it or not, was so kind to sponsor Walking Tall, to be a sponsor of the National Mental Health Marketing Conference. So they paid for our way to have a booth at the conference. I got a 5-minute recognition on stage. We showed a 3.5-minute intro video, which I shared last week, once again on social media. We interviewed over 30 mental health professionals for a 15-minute short form Walking Tall conversation for a podcast. And I was like, holy cow. Like, people actually
this thing got teeth.
Are valuing to some degree the messaging, right? And in some form or fashion, and make no mistake about it, they like us, right? Which is important. We're likable. And so getting to Nashville was just like, wow, we did it. And then a couple months later, in February of last year, I was invited to speak at the American Camp Association in New Orleans, speaking on supporting traumatized youth, because again, in my experience, I was the director of a summer camp operation that had 1,800 kids under my guide. We had 150 employees. And so I was the director called to make the decision, in essence, are we resuming camp? When are we resuming camp? How are we supporting camp counselors who were working the day of the shooting, but now had to have 12 10-year-olds in their guide for field trips? I mean, the amounts of problems you had to overcome were so we spoke about, uplifting traumatized youth in summer camp settings. And it just has taken off since then. I've spoken to college baseball programs, athletic departments, the list goes on and on. But it really was Beacon, just saying, hey, we value what you're doing. And I still stay in touch with them to this day. Adrian, come to Chicago for business. We have lunch. I mean, they're just an amazing support system in the right industry, which I want to play in.
Okay. So, now things are starting to come together, right? You're being asked to speak. The podcast is up and running. You're getting subscribers. People are downloading the podcast. You're getting all of this lovely response. People are sending you notes, but you're still battling. It's not like it went away, right? You're still dealing with all of this. So what's the process happening internally?
Yeah. So in many ways, I credit Pearl Jam to saving my life, but I should also credit the Walking Tall movement, right? It gave me purpose. And really, as I was let go from the Park District and not having to go to Highland Park ever, frankly, or at least when I did, it was on my own decision. And having this outlet to share my story, to allow others to share theirs, and to know that it was being received in such a manner that people were valuing it, subscribing to it, buying it.
They were taking an action.
Exactly. It was miraculous in the sense of like, how, like how and why. And so you go into this conversation with yourself of what can we keep doing and how can we keep doing it?
Is imposter syndrome starting to kick in a little bit?
No, because I'm honest with how I present myself.
Okay. So you just, here I am, take it or leave it. We're in a safe space. Let's go.
It hasn't always boded well for me. I've lost clients because of that.
Okay.
Right? In my fundraising efforts, because they had hoped.
You're not on brand.
I'm not on their brand.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Not on their brand.
Yeah.
And in nonprofit work, that's very important, right? Not to say that I'm not professional. I clean up nicely in a suit, etc. But like, I'm me. And that's not for everybody. So having the Walking Tall movement to express what it is I was going through as I was going through it. So I discussed my journey of EMDR, my journey of medication. The list went on and on. It just gave me an outlet to know that I wasn't, for lack of a better term, crazy for feeling the way I was feeling, because many times throughout the last year and a half before that, I was made to feel crazy. So having the Walking Tall movement as an outlet was just so important in so many ways, and it still is.
So now this connects. When do we start Hail Hail auctions? Which, by the way, Hail Hail is a Pearl Jam song.
My favorite one, by the way.
Okay, so there we go. Now it all connects back together. So Hail Hail auctions. What makes you think that you could be an auctioneer?
Well, I was told I could, believe it or not. And so during my time at the Park District of Highland Park, they have what's called the Smile Foundation, the Smile Scholarship. And what that was intended for, and it was intended for impoverished families who couldn't afford recreation fees, summer camps, swim lessons, etc., to apply for a scholarship.
It's like an inclusion type.
Exactly right. But as I elevated myself through the organization, I come to realize, well, it was a scholarship fund that was funded by tax dollars. So essentially one taxpayer was paying for another taxpayer's registration fees. I didn't feel good about that, right? In many ways. So I said, hey, why don't we start a banquet, a fundraising gala to support the scholarship? And athletics is the perfect vehicle because I had experience with boosters. I know the fundraising that goes into college athletic departments, high school athletic departments, etc. Let me start a gala. And they didn't believe I can do it. I told them that we can do it. Year one was 2016. I had Fergie Jenkins come and speak. We had about 110 people in the room.
You will believe me.
Yeah. And I willed it. And so we did that event for 5 years. Fergie Jenkins, Dennis Savard, Ozzie Guillen, Coach Ditka, and lastly, Chelly came in 2013 or 2023. The last year was 2023 of the Champions Gala. Chris Chelios was our keynote, and I had hired an auctioneer. His name was also Chris, believe it or not. So the 3 Chris's were backstage, and I had done my welcome remarks and my MC welcome stuff, and got back behind stage, and the auctioneer looked at me and goes, "You're really good on the mic." And Chelly looks at me and goes, "Yeah, you're really good on the mic." And Chris Hensley, who's one of my great mentors in auctioneering, said, "You could do what I do." And so I said, "Really?" Didn't think anything of it, but I had experience. And so when I got fired December 27th of 23, January 7th, I established an LLC called Hail Auctions. I worked to get my auctioneer license, just figuring I could do it because I was told I can do it.
Yeah. Sometimes that's all that you need.
And I'm
to be told you could do it.
And I'm doing it alongside now my keynote speaking and mental health advocacy. I have a company called Hail Auctions where we partner with what I call community building organizations.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to limit to nonprofit 501c3 because I also support PTOs, PTAs, athletic departments, things of that sort, libraries, government agencies, any type of event that has a fundraise, but is also building community. I don't want to, I'm not here to help
you want to be
funds.
Consistent.
Exactly right. So I started a company called Hail Auctions. Of course, it's named after my favorite Pearl Jam song. It was fitting. And that's really where I've been able to establish my personal brand, I think, in the sense of, this is on brand of Hail Auctions, right? And this is more my level of comfort. And what we do is we partner with community building organizations in any way, in any way, shape, or form, and provide any help they need to raise awareness and funds. And so I'm a licensed auctioneer. So I've been on stage.
How do you get a license for that?
You got to study and you got to pass a test in the state of Illinois. It's actually a real estate license.
No kidding.
So I have a license now to sell real estate. I can auction off cars and grain and cattle and things of that sort. I just focus on the charitable aspect of it. Like, I'm not interested in selling a cow,
Yeah. You'd have to throw the accent in there a little bit. That's good.
And then people say, well, can you talk like that? Well, I talked fast in general. Already.
Yeah.
That's part of my
the brain's going, baby.
I've already thought 30 things already before I said this sentence.
It's okay. Not alone.
So I can do that, but really the charitable aspect is more immediate relationship and sentiment building, enticing people to
open up
their hearts and their pocketbooks, right? All these things go. And because of Chris Hensley and his mentorship, one of the beautiful things about this industry is when you're an auctioneer and you commit to a gala on a Saturday, you can only work one gala.
Yeah.
There's only so
you're getting the offload.
I'm getting referrals left and right already, and I'm giving him referrals now. And so because of him, what I chose to do was not only become an auctioneer, I now believe maybe in the country, but certainly in the Chicagoland area, I have an offering to community building organizations unlike any other outfit out there. So not only am I an auctioneer,
you could do the keynote.
Yeah, I could
and then do the auction. Kind of like,
well, it's been funny. Here's a great example.
Yeah.
The biggest Rotary in Illinois, the Rotary of Schaumburg, Hoffman Estates.
Yeah.
They've been tremendous supporters of me and my work. I was so fortunate to be invited to speak to their organization about my experience of the mass shooting. But then when they come to find out I'm an auctioneer, I'm now the auctioneer for their gala in a month.
Yeah. See, I could brand this. You're the all-in-one holistic
I guess so.
package.
Yeah, but
He'll come out, he'll do the keynote, he'll auction, and then he might do some Pearl Jam covers.
No, we might have karaoke.
Let's go. He's got it all covered, man.
No, really, with Hail Auctions, so not only am I the auctioneer, I do the emceeing when asked, but I have a production company behind me. So whereas the Walking Tall movement was a lot of DIY, Todd is a very experienced IT guy. He could do a lot of the editing and things of that sort. I partnered with a production company to host now The Appeal, which is a bi-weekly podcast, 30-minute live show format where we bring on a charitable expert to promote their charity, what they do, why they do it, how they raise money, promote any events they have.
So you become a multiplier.
Become a multiplier, right? We're just being true to our mission of raising awareness and money for organizations, right?
Doesn't it feel good to tell somebody else's story?
Yes.
Because you've been telling yours so much. So now you're giving the gift of that muscle that you've established from telling your story. But now the subject matter has changed because now you're promoting other people's brands.
And I love
There's
it.
something really cool about that.
I love
Super
it.
fun.
I love it for many reasons. I love it, one, because I get to choose who I promote.
Yeah.
And if there's 56,000 charities in Illinois alone. There's over 3 million in the United States. I don't believe in every charity's work.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have to uplift that. And that's okay, right? And so having that ability to choose what charity and what do good work I promote makes all the difference in just my daily existence, because I feel as if I'm making an impact.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas if you're promoting some brand or you're trying to sell some tangible item that you don't really have a belief in,
Tough to do.
it's tough to do, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm providing a platform for organizations I believe making our world a better place to just speak their message. And it's resonating because what you will know about small charities, and I don't work with all small, but that's kind of, in essence, my bread and butter and how they all start. They don't have big marketing budgets. They don't have the ability to brand on podcasts and sponsor something like the Get Shit Done experience.
Yeah.
They have to be very mindful. They have to be very precise in how they promote themselves and where they put their resources towards. And so providing a free platform and allowing them to share their messaging.
You're creating the ramp up.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
So we were talking about, like, when people go to a blind auction, they're in fact going in blind. Oftentimes you go play in a golf event or you go to a gala event and then there's an auction there. You go there with no idea what's going to be at the auction. You don't know what you should budget for. You're not really certain of, what to prepare for, right? So what you're offering is, like, you're going to preemptively talk about, hey, some of these things that we're giving away, you might want to consider getting the message out, not give away, but auction off. We're going to talk about. So you're actually, people that are coming to that event, not only are getting the knowledge that they might need to go to the event and be prepared for it, but you're also helping the success of the auction because somebody comes there with intention.
Yes, that's the goal, is to create that focus, right? And you said it perfectly. As many events as I work, right, a lot of times the attendees are coming with an intention to support. They just don't know with how much or for what. And so educating in advance of, hey, these are the auction items, and finding ways to create social media content around one specific trip or that Taylor Swift autographed guitar that everybody's going to want to bid on. Whatever the case may be, has really bode well, and it has amplified the giving. We were talking offline, right? Like, there's no way to measure that because there's no direct correlation to say, hey, I saw you on the appeal with Chris and you talked about that Taylor Swift guitar and I wasn't letting it go for anything less than $5,000. So I bid on it for $5,000 and you can't correlate that. But again, it's just the amplification of the messaging, the creating of the awareness inevitably will return to raising money.
Yeah, that's why communications people and branding people don't work on commission.
Yep.
Because it's not like a sales funnel. It's not immediate gratification.
You might never know.
You may never know, but you do know, right? Like, but you don't know. So I started a lead share with a gentleman by the name of David Horbinko, who was one of the partners in a networking event called the Level Up Social Networking Events, right? And unfortunately, in the business that I previously was in, none of the people that I interacted with would be good clients or leads for David. But David kept giving me leads and they kept turning into opportunities. So now I'm sitting there going, like, he's giving me leads. I'm not reciprocating. I feel terrible.
I'm gonna help you.
So I reached out to him. This was a previous podcast. I reached out to him. I said, I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my podcast to your event and I'm going to record the podcast from the event, live stream it on multiple platforms. And he's like, well, who are you going to interview? I said, the people that come to the event or the people that sponsor it. Let's get them up. It'll be like speed dating. I'll create the content clips. We'll distribute it to them. They can send it out. And then they have content and it's all going to be logoed with your logo on it, my company's logo on it. We'll see what happens. Make a long story short, and they would validate this and tell you they were having about 60 to 70 people come to the events. The next event after that one, because of the pre-promotion, the content that went out, and the buzz, there was like 125 people at the next event. So we don't know exactly whether or not it was fully from the podcast. What we know is that it created an energy about the event, about the brand, that energy attracted more people. And people were coming to the event the next time looking over, like, where's the podcast set up? How do I get on there? Right? So that's the value that we
and what we did with Hail Hail Auctions through our production company, Brilliant Beam, on Giving Tuesday this year in November, we hosted what I tagged the first ever LinkedIn Giving Tuesday LinkedIn-a-thon or something like that. And what I did in advance is I opened up a sign-up page for 12 charities anywhere across the world, frankly, to register for a slot. And we did a live audio room. And we just gave them a 10-minute speed dating. Hey, promote your charity. Why should somebody consider giving to you, and how do they do it? That's it. What do you do? Why should somebody value it, and how do they donate? And that's it. So we had 12 charities come on in a 2-hour show. Boom, 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 boom. And we had charities from all over the country. But it's just that, right? That speed dating aspect is not one to be scoffed at in many ways. Like it's a quick hit, and people's attention spans are lessening and lessening by the day. And so having that ability to almost be the speed dater of sorts in business is not a bad idea in many ways.
So here's the cool thing, right? As we sit here today, you're completely healed, right?
Never. But that's cool. But listen, healing is a journey. I don't know that
I want to get out. Yeah, that's what I wanted to get out there. This is a process, right? And it's just like anything else. It's a muscle. You have to constantly work that muscle, right?
100%.
Healing process muscle.
Yeah. Healing is different for everybody. And kind of, as I said, when it relates to comparing traumas, comparing healing journeys is doing everybody a disservice. And we're on our own path. I have mine. I'm doing very well. I'm very happy with where I'm at, with what I have in front of me. That wasn't to say there hasn't been a lot of hard work, and there still aren't hard days. But having said all that, right, I don't know that I'll ever be healed.
Yeah.
Let's face it, I think about that day every day. I think about many things that I have done since then every day, right? That's the PTSD sneaking in on me. And I have now the tools and the abilities to control it and to manage it, so that way when I do feel a panic attack coming on, I can better manage that. Or I can at times stave it off. I can do some of my breathing exercises, or I bust out a fidget if I have it in my pocket, whatever the case may be. So no, not healed. I'm healing. I think I'll forever be healing. And there's a line in a song by Billy Corgan, believe it or not, you referenced him earlier. And it says, time heals, was by the Smashing Pumpkins, but it's time heals, but I'm forever broken. And that's so profound to say, like, yeah, I'm now going on 3 years from my experience. The weeks and months after what I went through, if one were to tell me, hey, Chris, in 3 years, this is what you'd be doing, I would have been like, you're out of your mind. I'm going to be in a ditch somewhere, or I have no future, whatever the case may be. So time has definitely healed me, but there are still parts of me that I have to address on a daily basis.
I love it. So those of you that know, this is my vehicle. Let me hold that up in the camera. Just ordered this like $20, but it's an amazing journal. Every day I come in, I put down my intentions, right? Or write down what I want my thought process to be. I got my get shit done bookmark in there, right? So whatever it takes, you have to have something, whether it's breathing, journaling, whatever it works. You got to try a multitude of things to find your thing. Some people it's fitness, working out, whatever it might be, but it never stops, and it's a beautiful process. If you own the process, you get vulnerable with the process, you kind of fall in love with the process.
Yeah.
And you get distracted positively by the process, which is a beautiful thing.
Yeah. What you initially described, in my estimation, is a routine. And I am so grateful. I know we talked at length about my athletic background and my experience in baseball particularly, but so much of what I learned through athletics and baseball has helped me through my healing journey. Right? You talk about that routine aspect. As an athlete, I had to have a routine. Yeah. I had to be more mindful of my diet. I had to exercise more. All of those things, when I was going really good and I had felt like I had things going for me, I've relied on now as a PTSD survivor, as a anxiety sufferer, whatever the case may be. So having those routines, whatever it is, as long as it's healthy, it is advantageous and worthwhile of investigating and pursuing. Again, journaling, exercise, breathing, meditation. Doesn't have to be everything. And I think sometimes that's where mental health gets kind of a bad rap, is it's like, I got to do all that just to feel good. No. Yeah. You got to find what works for you, right? Yeah. If it's just,
and you got to fall in love with it.
Exactly right. And you got to be dedicated to it, and you can't be distracted from it. And you got to just speak to it every day, and you got to speak about it to others. And, part of my, values, right, is vulnerability. And when I meet new people or I have relationships that have been established, I let them know, like, I'm going to just come by it honestly. How I'm feeling that you're going to get it. And if that's not for you, then I'm not for you. And that's okay.
And that's all right. There's a lot of people here on this earth.
Yeah, there's a lot.
So this is the Get Shit Done experience, and we'd like to get some shit done here. So how do people get in contact with you if they want to support the Walking Tall movement? Or let's say, would you do corporate training for HR departments, or would you allow brands to be involved in this if they wanted to have you come out and talk to their sales team? I mean, there's a lot of salespeople out there that are really struggling. There's a lot of rejection. It's just one of those type of careers that seems to it carries a lot there. But just businesses in general, how could a company partner with you, engage with you to not only support their cause, but to do the right thing for their people?
Yeah, no, thank you for asking that. So I'm very present and prevalent on LinkedIn. I'm very active on that platform for good reason. And you can reach me there, Chris Maliszewski. You can also, as you mentioned earlier, walkingtallmovement.com, otherwise hailhailauctions.com. There's many.
Just hit that contact us button.
Yep. There's many ways to get a hold of us. Hell, if you need my cell phone number, I'll give it out, right? That's kind of what we're all about. And so we just want to help and work with anybody who values mental health, who understands the need for approachability and vulnerability, and, you know, may value a story like mine that your employees will inevitably learn from and value themselves much differently.
So we know you're running events, okay? We know that events are back. We know that you've got your summer golf tournaments and your galas. We know that you're doing fundraising. We know that you are attaching your brand to brands that are doing things for greater good, like 501c3. So those of you out there that are running brands and you're doing marketing and PR and you want to create a great story about your brand, how you give back to communities, and maybe you're raising some money, fundraisers. Pretty sure you've got somebody on here that you're listening to that would come out and do a heck of a job. So what type of businesses should be reaching out to you to run their auction and maybe be their keynote speaker?
Yeah. So that's the great thing. And I think with some intention, what I've tried to create for myself as it is a brand and service to the world and to businesses, et cetera, is there's not a business out there that I haven't found an ability to support. Mm-hmm. And so whether it's you folks here at TTSG, I could come and speak to your staff about them valuing their own mental health, mm-hmm. right? The entryway is my story. People are going to be enamored by that inevitably. But the takeaway is, hey, if that guy can go to therapy, I can too. Mm-hmm. If that guy has been vulnerable about his mental health, I can too. And because of that, I'll be a better salesperson. Mm-hmm. Small businesses, right? No different than what you're doing here on the GSDX. We can create brand awareness through our podcasting, through some of our partnerships and collaborations, through merchandising, and we can put
sponsorship.
Exactly right. Your business's logo would look great here, and the Walking Tall logo would look great on the sleeve.
Little logo placement never hurt nobody.
But you know what I'm saying? So there's many ways there to support businesses. Conferences and things of that sort. I have great experience in speaking to large groups of people about my experience and my takeaways from it. So from a mental health perspective, there's not one organization or person I don't think I could find a way, or we couldn't find a way to support and get creative in collaboration. Particular to fundraising efforts, as I said, community building organizations that raise funds to give back are my bread and butter. Organizations I want to get to know, and I want to get to know me and find out if there's ways that we can combine resources to make our world a better place. I can also, again, with small businesses, I can combine, and I've had great success, and it's an initiative of mine that I'm very focused on, in finding small business owners that want to give back but don't know how. So think about, as an example, a friend of mine owns a garage door repair company. He's very successful, but he's a garage door repair. It's not very sexy, right? He has charitable interest. He just doesn't yet know how to get his company awareness. So I became the conduit. Hey, man, you want to donate a garage door service to this dog charity that I'm doing an auction?
Tell the story for you.
Yeah, exactly right. And not only are you getting a tax write-off, but you're getting free marketing, because guess what? The next time that person's garage door breaks down, who are they going to call and pay?
1,000%.
And who are they going to tell their friends did the free garage door service from the dog charity that they supported? It's this ecosystem of philanthropy, however you say it, that I'm striving to create, and it's building and it's growing, and I'm getting sponsorships for the appeal. And last year, we attributed $3 million of fundraising in some form or fashion to just over 20 charities in 1 year with no money behind us, all blood, sweat, and tears, elbow grease, no sponsorship, just me on a stage.
Hustling, baby.
And doing podcasting, So really, there's a way, I believe, in any form or fashion for me to help support a business that wishes to make our world a better place.
And brands, remember, you can't say enough good things about yourself that will ever equal what other people can say about your brand. So when you do things like that, it's the noise, the positive noise that is created from advocates and evangelists of your brand because you've associated your brand with good deeds.
Dude, I'm telling you, like, nothing makes me happier as a small business owner and as kind of a personal branding entrepreneur, if you will, than to hear, I got your name from somebody that you've already worked with. Now, listen, it feels really good to hear and have a person fill out a questionnaire on your website, cold call. You don't know how they got to you. That feels really good too. But when somebody says, hey, I got your name and number from John.
Because they're happy.
Because you worked with them and you rocked it.
Yeah.
That feels really
badass.
Good. And so that's what I strive to do. And really, fundraising is a relationship business like most.
All right. So final thought. Leave us with a final thought. I always like to get this, like, this podcast is about people that have risen, overcome, gotten to a level that others aspire to get to. And in order to do that, they had to get shit done. So for some people, it's a mindset. For some people, it's a process. I have learned over the last couple of years that discipline is far more important than motivation. Whatever your mix is, right? I've got 3 pillars. I believe in mindset, behavior, and technique. That's like my thing, right? If I go back to that all the time. Which one's off? If I could correct that, then I get all 3 working at the same time. So what do you want to leave us with that will help somebody, one person go, now I got it. I'm going to get more shit done.
Yeah. I mean, listen, the mantra is walk tall, right? And that's how I end most of my conversations. That's how we end our shows. And, I just want, if anything, to instill upon others that mentality that if you're not feeling up for it yourself, you have a community to support you. So that way, when you are feeling up for it, you can support others, right? And getting shit done to me is having an undeniable belief in yourself regardless. But it's also being honest with yourself when you aren't feeling your best, right? Because inevitably to get shit done, you're going to have to help others. Others are going to have to help you. This is not a world where we're meant to do this alone. And there's a reason why when we speak particular to mental health, that mantra is you are not alone. And in business, if you can carry that same mentality, you're going to get a lot farther faster. You're going to make a lot more money. You're going to help the world become a lot better place. And so with that, walk tall.
All right. So you heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to get more shit done, you better be walking tall.
You love it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Chris, you absolutely rocked it. And yes, sir, I want to remind you, you got shit done.
I did. And you get shit done, man. I can't tell you how much fun this is. Your studio is amazing. I'm envious. I want to know how much it is to rent it out for the Walking Tall movement.
Well, it's a great conversation for us to have.
But honestly, this has been just an amazing experience. You've been top notch from the time I've gotten to know you, even as far as having my ugly face on the welcome marquee in the office when I got here made me feel so good. And
I don't know. We were like, man, look at that face. That thing's a gem, baby.
Face for radio.
Then you came in with a Pearl Jam hat and a leather jacket on. We're like, man, change the picture. Take a new one.
No. Listen, you guys are getting shit done. You personally, TTSG.
Appreciate it.
Are an inspiration. It's been great to see your journey. I can't thank you enough for your vulnerability and sharing your own struggles and triumphs. It inevitably is going to make the world a better place. So thank you for getting shit done.
Thanks, Chris. Hey, folks out there, follow us. Let us be part of your life. We want to be part of your life. So follow us, send us notes, send us messages. We'll come talk to your team.
That's it.
By the way, everything that Chris and I just talked about, like on LinkedIn especially, we do day in and day out. I was DMing with people at 9:45 last night that I presented to the day before, just chatting it up with them. Like, we social sell. We believe in branding. We go speak to people. This is how you build your business in this day and age. So if you want to get more shit done, walk tall.
Walk tall.
Cheers.
Can your business handle 15% growth? If yes, you have to engage with 2020 Design. They fuse data and creativity to stop the scroll, break through the noise, and grab the attention of your future customers. 2020 Design will create competitive, click-worthy campaigns, design and build custom websites, spark your social media presence, and structure email campaigns that get right to your audience, the decision maker. Let's boost attention and awareness, which allows you to convert more sales. Check them out at 2020design.com. That's the number 20, TWENTY, design.com.